Hi everybody, welcome to North American Sake Brewery. I'm Andrew Santafonte, I'm the owner and the head brewer here. We got a big day in front of us where we're going to learn about sake, how it's made, a little bit about the history, and of course, taste it. We got a lot to talk about today, but feel free to go ahead and jump ahead to one of the individual tastings if you want to just talk about the sake. So I'm going to show you guys around the brewery. We can learn about how it's made, but we can also learn a little bit about what sake is at its core and some of the myths and etiquette around sake, as well as some of the history. So let's dive in. What is sake? At its core, it is a fermented alcoholic beverage made from rice. It's Japanese in origin, and really there's a lot of rice-based alcohols all throughout Asia, and sake is a very particular expression of that. And it's a really beautiful beverage. Usually ranges between 15 to 20% alcohol, very labor-intensive process, very skilled process to get the flavors just right, but a really wide range of flavors. So it can go from fruity over to earthy, it can be sweet, it can be dry, it can be really light, or it can be full-bodied and rich. There's a lot of room to explore sake, and that's one of the reasons I really fell in love with sake, is that there's just so much to explore. All these different brewers making wonderful and beautiful expressions just for something as simple as rice. It's a really old beverage, very ancient beverage. Some say over 3,000 years old. And like a lot of alcohol, it started in the Shinto shrines and the Buddhist temples, made its way to royalty, and then eventually down to the common man. And now everyone all over the world is drinking sake. And we're making sake here in America, so it's a pretty amazing thing. And a lot of people ask me, is there a right way to drink sake? And the answer is really just any way you want. Pick up a glass, pour yourself some, and have some sake. There are a few things that are typically done around sake, but you don't have to. Usually it's really polite to make sure that you pour your fill someone else's glass and make sure that their glass is full throughout. Sometimes people will pour with two hands, and it's just ways to show gratitude and to show hospitality. Because sake is really, at the end of the day, a communal drink. It's made for sharing. It's made for being with family and friends, for celebrations, for weddings. It is a drink to cheers or to kanpai over. So yeah, sake is just a wonderful, wonderful drink. But enough about that. Let's talk about how it's made. First thing you got to know is that sake is made from rice. So come check this out. This is our rice right here, and as you can kind of see, it's little pearls. And so that process is called milling. Good sake rice has a core of starch that lives right in the center of the grain. And when you mill, you're getting rid of fats and proteins and other things to get a more refined starch content. So different sake grades and classes are based a lot on the mill rate. The more highly milled it is, you'll probably get more fruity and aromatic styles of sake. The more of the grain that you leave into the brew will give you more robust, complex, earthy sakes. So you'll hear a lot of people talk about the mill rate. We get all of our rice from the US. We either get it from Arkansas or California. And we steam a lot of rice here. So follow me over here. This is our rice steamer. And it's really simple in concept. The way you steam rice in sake is a little bit different from how you might steam rice to eat. We want to make sure that during the steaming process, the water does not come in contact with the rice. So on this bottom level, we have water and steam and heat. And the steam will rise up through that, through the rice, through this table. And we'll cook the rice. And so we cook anywhere between 500 to 1,500 pounds of sake, or of rice at a time, to make a batch of sake. So a lot of rice is steamed here. And it's really the start of the process. You want to make sure that the rice is cooked all the way through, and so that it doesn't get mushy. If the rice gets too wet, it gets mushy, it won't convert later on in other processes. So it's very important that we get the rice steaming right. The first thing that we do after we steam rice is we make something called koji. So this is our koji room, and you can kind of see inside we have some koji that's getting ready to be made. But koji is an essential part of our process, and a lot of you might be wondering, what's koji? But I guarantee you've all had it before. If you've ever had soy sauce or misos. Koji is an essential fermentation, part of that fermentation. So what koji actually is a mold, the think-friendly mold like a cheese. And what it does is as it grows, it makes all these really wonderful enzymes that turn starch into sugar. Without sugar, you have no alcohol. So it's really important that we get sugar. And so what we do is we'll take steamed rice, we'll bring it into this room where it's hot and humid, and for about 2 days, we take very, very good care of it to make sure that the koji is growing just right to produce a ton of enzymes that we'll later use to ferment into alcohol. This part of the process is very labor intensive. I spend a lot of time in this room. It's hot, it's humid. I'm in there at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, really taking care of that koji to make sure that it's growing just right. But the result is fantastic. You get this wonderful aroma, kind of like sweet chestnuts mixed with frosted flakes and some tropical notes of like mango and pineapple. It's really quite wild. And the flavor is really delicious as well. And a lot of people say the koji room is the heart of a sake brewery. It's really where a lot of the character comes from because it is such a hands-on part of the process. So yeah, this is our koji room. Once the koji is done being made, it goes into fermentation. So yes, now we'll go to main fermentation. And this is where we take the koji, we steam even more rice, water, and this is where we'll pitch the yeast in the tanks where it's cold fermented for around 30 days. It's fermented at a very, very cold temperature. And actually in Japan, they have a brewing season that lasts from October through March. And the reason was, traditionally, it was the only time of year you could get your tank super, super cold. It also coincides with the seasons where you're planting rice and growing it in the summer months. In the fall, you're harvesting. And in the winter, you're brewing sake. It's also really important the tanks are cold because something really special is happening in this tank. It's called multiple parallel fermentation. So, two things are happening. Rice is slowly getting broken down by the koji, and the yeast is slowly eating up those sugars and making alcohol. It's the only alcohol that does it this way. It's a very, very fine process because you're trying to get two organisms to live in harmony and to create something delicious. So it takes a lot of skill, a lot of time, a lot of effort to make sure those things are happening at just the right pace. But when the sake is done, it is delicious and it is beautiful. So follow me over here to our press. This is the last step of the process. Our press right here. So when the sake is done, we have a thick mash still. Not all the rice breaks down, and so you have a thicker mash. And we need to separate that to make our different clear sakes drinkable. So this is our press, and what this does is it's a lot of cloth filters that help separate the solids from the liquid. And so what we'll do is we'll push the sake through it. The solids will get kind of stuck between each of the presses, and then the sake will run out and back into a tank. Now this is where our cloudy sake comes from. In our tasting we talk a lot about what cloudy means, but this is a rough filter, so it gets rid of the bigger particles. But some of those fine particles come running through and come back to our tank, and that's what we bottle right away as cloudy sake. From there, we will do some finer filtration to get our clear sakes, and then we will do all of our hand bottling right here in the brewery. So yeah, that's the basics of how you make sake. Welcome to the North American Sake Brewery tasting room. We've got an assortment of fantastic sakes to talk about and taste together, so go ahead and grab your bottles out of the fridge. I recommend that you, as soon as you get this tasting kit, first throw it in the fridge. Make sure that you keep it cold. That way you'll get the freshest sake possible. But then when you drink it as well, I also recommend drinking it chilled. It brings out a lot of nuance of flavor and aroma. And then I would also say that after you open it, set it on the counter and let it mellow and come to room temperature. It's really fun to explore different temperatures of sake, and you can see how it opens up and evolves as you're drinking it. You may also notice that we're going to be drinking out of these North American Sake Brewery cups today. And they're usually small. Sake glasses are usually small, and there's a reason for that. And it's not because you should shoot it back like a shot. It's more tied to a tradition of hospitality. And so the idea is that your glass should always be full. So if you see a friend's glass that's empty, you should fill it up for them. It's just a fun practice to do. But having a smaller glass gives you more opportunities to fill someone's cup because it'll be empty more often. It also appears that maybe you're not drinking as much sake as you really are. I also encourage you guys to just jump around this video. We're going to go through each of these individually. You can jump to that specific sake and learn more about that one, or learn a little bit more about how it's made or the history of sake as you're sipping. So for our Real Magic, this is a Junmai grade sake, which means that it's milled to about 70%, which isn't an extreme amount of milling. It's more of a table sake. And what's great about these sakes is they're good for sipping, they are good for cooking with, they're good for heating up, all kinds of different things that Junmais are really great for. You'll get a more robust and complex sake. Our Real Magic in particular has notes of apple and pear. And what I love about it is that it's right in the middle. This is why it's such a great table sake. It's not too sweet, it's not too dry. It starts off with this apple and pear notes and then it kind of moves through to an umami finish. I am proud of how this Real Magic turned out. This won us a silver medal at the Sake World Tasting Challenge. So really proud of how this one turned out. And the name itself actually has some really fantastic meaning. So this is Real Magic. So when I first started to brew sake, I was fascinated by the process. I couldn't believe all of these flavors and complexity and depth came from something as simple as rice. And at the end of the day, it just felt like it was magic. So we decided to call this one Real Magic. As you pick this up and as we're about to take our first sip, let's do a kanpai. So a kanpai is cheers in Japanese. And really you raise your glass anytime you're drinking and you clink them and say kanpai. And what it means is literally turn your glass upside down or empty your cup. So let's raise a glass together. Kanpai. All right, so we're drinking our big baby, and as you can see, it's got a cloudy appearance to it. And so what that is, all it is little tiny particles of rice. A lot of people say it's kind of just a rough filtration of the sake. And so nigori, or cloudy style sakes, can be ranged from thicker and creamier to really light. Ours is kind of right in the middle. And for us, we have a lot of interesting things going on. When you try this big baby, you're going to get big flavor, big texture, a lot of banana notes from this one, which I think is really, really delicious. It's one of our top selling sakes here at the brewery, I think because it looks a little bit different, but the flavor is really, really there. And you actually get a lot of big rice flavor from these sakes too, so take a sip. Fantastic. The other thing that's fun to know is that our Big Baby and our Real Magic are actually brother and sister. What do I mean by that? Well, it means that usually they come from the exact same batch. It's just that the Big Baby, we've decided to leave some of those particles in, and the Real Magic, we have further clarified it to a nice clear sake. So it's really fun to taste them side by side to see what the differences are between a nigori or a cloudy style sake and a more clarified sake. So the name Big Baby has a lot of meaning for us as well. So once we press it, which is kind of removing the mash and the rice from the liquid sake, you're left with a cloudy sake. And so what we try to do is to bottle it immediately. And that gives it a lot of fresh, big, bold flavor to it. And so that's why we call it Big Baby, because it's kind of this young moment of sake. All right, so now we're drinking our Quiet Giant. So this one is kind of on the one side of the spectrum, extra dry sake. So a lot more earthy flavors to this one, more kind of dryness in your mouth that you taste. And so contrasting it to these, this is kind of on that one side of the spectrum. And so extra dry, how do we accomplish that? So what we do is we let it ferment longer at cold temperatures. And what that does is allow the yeast to eat up more of those sugars, and it drives the alcohol content up. And so we call this a karakuchi genshu, which means kind of a dry, karakuchi means dry, usually a little bit of spicy character to that dryness, and then genshu means full strength. So this is 18% alcohol. But we call it Quiet Giant for a reason, because even though it's 18%, it's very, very smooth and So we like to say, don't let the quiet giant sneak up on you because he can get you. So yeah, let's give this a taste. Like I said, very dry, a lot more earthy notes to it, some more kind of cedar or mushroom, big umami flavor to it. I would say whiskey drinkers tend to really, really love this sake. A little more alcohol forward to it. All right, so we're going to drink our Serenity now, a Junmai Daiginjo grade of sake. So Junmai Daiginjo is the highest kind of classification for sake. It means that the rice has been milled to a very, very fine degree and usually gives a very refined, smooth taste to it. A little bit more aromatic, a little bit more floral character to it. Our Serenity now has really wonderful notes of tangerine, a little bit of lychee to it, and then just an ultra silky finish, which is just fantastic. We're really proud of how this one turned out. We won a bronze medal for this at the Sake World Tasting Challenge. And so yeah, let's give this a taste. Kanpai. Oh yeah, it just fills your mouth and just is so silky and velvety on your tongue. It has these nice notes and it does linger a little bit and it's very, very pleasant. And the name Serenity Now is actually a reference to one of my favorite shows, which is Seinfeld. And for me, kind of going through the process of making this and then tasting the results, for some reason it kind of had this serene quality to it, and I thought, Serenity now! But if you drink too much, insanity later. So yeah, this is a really, really delicious sake. Hope you enjoyed it. So Serenity Now is a fantastic sake to pair with a lot more traditional Japanese cuisine, fresh fish, a lot more lighter kind of fare, maybe like a charcuterie or something like that, because the character of it is so refined and delicate that it could easily get overwhelmed by too big or too bold or maybe too fatty foods. So I think this is a great one for more of a light cuisine. So our Quiet Giant pairs so well with a ton of different foods because it's so dry. It can really hold up to a lot of other things. So I like to recommend spicy food with it. I think it's really fantastic with maybe even like Indian food. And because that dryness, it just kind of can compete with a lot of big, bold flavors. I also think that it's good for things like ramen and other kind of hot soups. I think it goes really well. All right, so Big Baby is of course delicious with a lot of different food, mostly because it's big. It's got a bold flavor to it. It's got a lot going on, and so it can hold up well with a lot of big foods too. So I like to pair Big Baby with actually some more fatty things like fried chicken or like a pepperoni pizza. It is so good to pair with because it can hold up on its own. It's got a lot of flavor. It's got a lot going on, and so it just adds to that component of your cuisine. All right, so Real Magic is obviously great to pair with a lot of different food. Like I said, it's kind of an all-around winner, so you're not going to lose by pairing this with almost anything. You could go well to the more traditional side, have like sushi or fresh fish, or more American, like a steak. It tastes really, really good with. Playing with temperature of this one's fun as well, so or even cooking with it. So you can use this to add a lot of flavor to some of your meals. Think of it kind of like as a replacement for white wine in a lot of recipes. So yeah, Real Magic is just an all-around winner. Don't be shy about trying to pair this with a lot of different food. All right, thank you guys so much for joining me on this sake tasting adventure. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I know that I did. It's always fun to explore sake, to try a lot of different sakes. I encourage you all to try a lot of different sakes. It's so delicious. There's so much that goes into how it's made, and the results are so wonderful. So I hope you continue your sake journey If you want to learn more about us, you can visit our website, www.pourme1.com. Like this video, share it with your friends, that would be really awesome. And if you want to purchase sake directly, you can go to our website, pourme1.com/buy. We ship to a number of states. We can get it delivered directly to your door. So yeah, thanks for joining us. And one last kanpai. Kanpai, y'all. Thank you.